on your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Chrissie is hilarious.
Chrissie, have you ever heard of the comedian Basha K. Ali?
No, that sounds like something you yell out before you blow up a plane.
30 seconds remaining.
But you know what, good you say I dabbled in stand-up or something. I haven't been disrespectful to you at all.
I was very confused by the title, Everything Everywhere All at Once, because that's also what we call it when Ash takes off his shirt.
I shouldn't be up here. I should be in school on the other side of the ocean.
Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to another episode of the Chrissie Mayr Podcast, your favorite podcast, I hope. You can listen to us on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, Rumble, Rockfin, all of the places fine podcasts are sold. I got some stand-up shows coming up, all in the United States, unfortunately. I got to get out. I got to maybe get out of the country. It's been a minute. Okay. March 23rd, I'll be at the Bridgeport Stress Factory. Keanu Thompson will be opening for me. That's a Thursday show. Come check it out if you're a Connecticut person. Then I'll be in New York City doing 2 shows on Saturday, March 25th at the Grizzly Pear in Midtown Manhattan. Gino Bisconti will be hosting. Keanu Thompson and Andrew Harms will be doing spots on these shows as well. So if you're a Compound Media fan, come on out to this show on the 25th. In the city. Then we got this show in Staten Island. I'll be headlining at the Reef in Paradise Island. My gosh, doesn't that sound tropical? But it's not. It's Staten Island. But I'm excited to go back there. It's been years since I've been to Staten Island. Then I'll be in Jersey Saturday, April 8th, headlining Morris Plains Tiff's Ale House, also known as the Dojo of Comedy. Great room. They do a really good chicken salad. Their Cosmos are very strong. That's why I keep going back there. Then I'll be in Vegas Thursday, April 27th. I'm headlining The Space. So if you're in town that weekend for the Friday Night Tights meetup, the Geeks and Gamers meetup, just come to the show. We'll all be there. It'll be a big hang. Super fun. The meetup's on Wednesday. We got this show on Thursday. And then we're doing Friday Night Tights from a studio out in Vegas on Friday. So it's going to be a fun weekend. Then I'm heading to Dallas. Lila Hart will be at this Vegas show too, by the way, featuring for me. Then I'm heading to Dallas the first week in May. I'll be at the Blaze doing Alex Stein's show for a couple days leading up to this weekend. Once that schedule gets straightened out, I'll definitely let you guys know. But I'll be hanging out with Alex Stein. Then I'm doing a weekend of shows at Hyenas in Dallas. 2 shows Friday, 2 shows Saturday. Lila Hart will be featuring for me, and Alex Stein should be popping by for a set here and there too when he can. And then I'll be in Richmond, Virginia at the Sandman Comedy Club on Wednesday, August 9th. And then we got Anime Matsuri August 10th through the 13th in Houston. Simpcast will be at this convention. We will have a panel. We will have a booth. I'm not exactly sure who of us will be there yet, but we'll be there. It'll be fun. And I'm headlining that same weekend in Houston, Friday, August 11th at the Secret Group, 7:00 show. It'll be right after the convention concludes for the day. And it ends early enough that you could still go out and like get hammered afterwards. It'll be kind of like an unofficial after party. So if you know you're coming to Anime Matsuri, get your tickets now for the Secret Group show. And I'm excited to see you guys there. It should be really, really fun. Love doing stand-up. Love making you guys laugh. We're having a lot of fun crowd interactions, getting heckled by people. It's all good. It's all good. I'm so excited to have this gal on the show today. She is the host of Reasoned UK. She's a political commentator. Welcome to the show, Jess Gill. Hello, and how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on.
I'm so excited. I love your accent. I was like, you know what? We need to get more British people on this show, more people with fun accents, because I listened back to my own voice and, well, it's just not my favorite.
Thank you so much. It's great to have this opportunity to speak.
Yeah, you're from okay. We might have some British people in the chat. We might have some British fans. I checked the analytics. Maybe we've got like a handful of fans in Europe. Where exactly are you based out of? All I know is
So,
London and then other countries.
so right now I'm living in Reading, but I'm originally from Manchester.
Okay. And that's where the football, aka soccer team is from, right?
Yeah, there's a big football team there.
See, I know some things. Okay, the longer I talk, the dumber I sound. Jess, tell us about sort of your origin story. Did your parents kind of raise you in a way that made you value freedoms, or did you have like a moment where you really became more passionate? So sort of like take us through how you became just like a kid, you're going to school and now you're passionate about freedom.
So the funny thing is the rest of my family are completely apolitical. Like the only person who was remotely political in my family was my grandma. And as a rebellious act when she was young, she always used to recall the story of writing Margaret Thatcher's name in the French beaches to annoy them, which is always really funny. But the
Oh,
rest
like
of my
in the
family,
sand, you mean? Like with a stick?
yeah,
Oh, that's cute.
that was her small act of rebellion, and Franco hatred. But other than that, so the rest of my family are completely apolitical. It's not that they're left wing or right wing. It's just that they don't care at all, which is a shame because I think politics is so important to know about. You know, who runs the country, what decisions they're making. I think that's just so essential. And as much as I've tried to make them political, they were just like, nope, we're not doing it. So my passion for politics, which is quite embarrassing, came from 2016 Ben Shapiro destroys liberal type of videos.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never heard anybody mention like Ben Shapiro as part of their like red pilling process, but I love it.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think
ready.
loads of people like them videos just really resonated something. Just like simple things which weren't really the norm back in the day. Like for example, I remember in 2016 the idea that white people can't experience racism was seen as ridiculous. Of course, white people can experience racism. You know, racism is just prejudice or discrimination against someone based on their skin color. So of course, white people can experience it. Or for example, that there's more than two genders. 5 years ago, everyone knew that there were only two genders, and now it
Hmm.
seems like it's
Yeah.
blasphemy to say otherwise. So through lockdown, where I was at sixth form, which is in the UK system, it's when you're 16 to 18. Lockdown happened then for me, and
Oh,
I thought it
wow.
was a good opportunity to make TikTok videos. TikTok is a very cursed app, but honestly, I'm so thankful for it because it allowed me to share what I know to a wider audience. It's so easy to go viral on TikTok. And because there was such a deficit of right wing voices, of libertarian or conservative voices, people seemed to like my content. Even if it was just like memes and that kind of stuff, people liked it. And so from then, I got recruited by Reasoned UK, which was originally hosted by Darren Grimes. If you know who that is, he's now
No, that's embarrassing. I
he
should know.
does work with GB News. If you know what that is, it's probably a
Okay.
whole different world in the UK than the US. But
We're
I
very
basically,
like self-absorbed. It's like unless it's really essential, we don't really look and see what's going on.
I
I'm just
mean,
speaking for myself, I guess.
fair enough. But basically, I took over from him and I started making daily political content, which was similar to what I was doing on TikTok, but on a YouTube platform, which was absolutely fantastic. And since then, I've just spreaded the liberty message, spreading basic facts, which were basic facts in 2016, but now they're seen as ridiculous to say. And one of the favorite parts of my job is that I have the opportunity to go out in the street and ask people simple questions like, what is a woman? And
Hmm.
see them absolutely squirm when they can't answer that simple question.
Oh, this is great. Okay. I have definitely seen Reasoned before. I take it back. Okay. And is this just based in the UK or is there are you in other countries as well? Okay, it looks like mostly just UK.
Yeah, it's just the UK. But because like I don't think there's enough of a voice for young people who are centre right leaning or right wing. And it's just such a shame because the majority of young people either don't care about politics, and I think the ones who don't care about politics are generally conservative, and I think that's why there's such a deficit of loud voices on the right. Because I think the average person knows common sense. I don't think they care about this woke stuff. So Reasoned is just making that interesting because we do need their voices. We do need young people to be loud and clear about this stuff because it does have real impacts, like the gender nonsense. Like, it may just seem like pronoun badges, but it's not just pronoun badges. Like, there is also believing that there's more than two genders is advocating for children to go on hormone blockers or advocating for biological men to go into women's spaces, women's toilets and prisons. These have real world implications.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so interesting that you were so young, like during the lockdown. So explain to me again, like the part, like the portion of school that you're in, I guess between the years of 16 and 18. Is it like post high school, or is it like the final years of high school?
So basically, we do our GCSEs from 12 to 16, which is basically just like standard education. And then after that, you either go, I think you can go into an employment at that age full time, or you go into sixth form or college, we call it. And that's basically, we do 3 subjects and you focus on them 3 subjects for 2 years. Or you do a BTEC, which is basically like focusing in like nursing or I don't know,
Okay,
police.
like a trade or a specific job or a
Yeah.
profession. Okay, I feel like that makes more sense than like I feel like there's very much pressure in the US, like, everybody go to college no matter what you're interested in, like, you just maybe it's more like the boomer mentality, like, the generation that most of our parents are, uh, like, if you're in your 30s or something, like, it was just like, "Go to college no matter what, that's the only way you'll get a good job," whereas that's definitely not the case, like, you could pursue, like, a trade or yeah, if it makes sense if you really want to be, like, a nurse or a doctor or, like, I don't know, a cat dentist or something, okay, you definitely have to go
I
to a
mean,
certain school.
the scam in British education, though, even though you have this like specified education, they still make you go on to university and accumulate so much debt. Even if you go like Tony Blair, who was prime minister like a decade ago, he pushed for like 50% of the country to go into university. And now it's similar to what's happening in the US. Like, everyone's going to university, even if they don't need it. I personally have not been to university yet. I think it's so useful taking a few years out and just considering what actually you want to do if you actually need it, because most of the time you don't actually need to go to university.
It's definitely fun. It was basically like sleepaway camp, but, like, everyone's hooking up. It was just like you're away from your parents. It's kind of a sweet deal in terms of, like, you can goof off and kind of skate by. Like, your parents are paying for your expenses or you have, like, you yourself are working a job to supplement, and it's like, it doesn't feel like at the time that you're spending all this money. You just graduate and you have all this debt and you're like, "Oh shit." But at the time it feels like everything's free. You're just like swiping away and yeah, everyone's just getting drunk and hooking up. But maybe that was just my experience. But I also did a sport, so I felt like I was just living at the pool and then going to class. But that's neither here nor there. So the lockdowns hit. You're how old and how was it dealt with kind of where you were going to school?
So the lockdowns hit when I was 16 at that point, and basically it meant that we couldn't go into school at all.
So you're like
And
only 19 right now.
yeah.
Good for you. You have your act together. You have a good head on your shoulders. You're doing great.
Thank you. But the lockdowns happened, and that meant we couldn't go to school. It was all online, which was an absolute disaster. It basically meant that no one like basically had any education other than some like slideshows for half a year, which is funny because like 6 months later when I started sixth form, the teacher was like, you can't just look at the slideshows, you need to come into class. And then it was completely the opposite, the other way around, like, oh, the slideshows will do, it's completely fine.
Hmm.
And so that completely messed up everyone's education. There was a rule that you couldn't leave your household, which other than to go on a walk a day or to get
Oh,
basic
wow.
necessities, which wasn't really enforced that well, but some people did get fined. And then it became like a 6-person rule where you could go into groups of 6 and have a bubble. And then when we finally did go into school, which was like the last 6 months of my education, everyone had to wear a mask, which was so hard to, especially because it always rains in the UK because the weather's absolutely atrocious. And I remember being in English class, everyone was wearing a mask, and the rain was pattering really loud on the roof. And my teacher, Dave, asked me a question, and it was so hard to like speak with the mask on and the rain pattering down. Like it was impossible to do. And because we missed like basically a year and a half of education, the whole grading system was messed up. A lot of young people didn't get into university. In my case,
Wow.
I was fine, I guess. I actually think I got better grades than I deserve. But a lot of my friends were absolutely gutted they couldn't get into university, or they had to go into their second choice. So that was completely messed up. And in my cousin's situation, because it's the same in the US, it's same in the UK as it's in the US with university culture, we have this thing called Freshers Week where everyone just gets absolutely drunk. And the whole social aspect, which is why most young people go to university nowadays, they couldn't do that for the first year, so their social life was completely gone for that year. And I remember
Yeah.
my cousin, who's a year above me, for example, she got fined for basically having an illegal party in her friend's room.
Wow. How many people were there?
I think only like 20, maybe 10.
Okay.
But yeah, she got fined like a few £100s.
Was there a sense of like you guys are all 16? Like, was there a sense that, and even like over the next couple of years, did you see among your friend group like people wanting to kind of fight it, or were you seeing like a lot of dissent, like in your kind of like just private conversations among friends, like in school, like you're going to school in masks? Like, were you getting the sense that most people were just going with the flow and not wanting to get in trouble with like teachers and not want to fight against authority? Or was there a real like, growing sense of like, what are we doing here? Like, we're not dropping dead in the streets. Like, why all these mandates?
I think most people generally didn't question it. The only reason why they wouldn't comply with the lockdown rules wasn't like this grand political statement, like it wasn't the Hunger Games. It was just that they found masks uncomfortable, which they are. It's really annoying, especially because everyone in Britain has a cold, so you have a snotty nose with masks on. And if you're a woman, like all the
Did you say
makeup goes on.
everyone in Britain has a cold?
Everyone has a cold. It's because of the weather. It's always so cold in the UK.
Oh, wow. You're just like perpetually ill. You're not selling me on the UK on visiting.
It's fantastic. It's just not a great place to live. The taxes are too high, and everyone has a cold, and the weather's awful. But
Oh
other
my
than that, it's
gosh.
fine. We have some nice buildings.
Okay.
But no, everyone seemed to be fine with like everyone's sort of annoyed at the government, but half of the people annoyed at the government don't think that the government went far enough. And then the other half,
Really?
yeah,
Okay, wow. What would they have liked to have happen?
they wish the lockdown was enforced quicker, and the rules were stricter as well, which is kind of funny as well because we've had the COVID files, which basically the Telegraph, which is a British magazine, have basically reported. I think it's 100,000 messages off Matt Hancock, who was a health secretary under COVID. And basically, it just showed the government had absolutely no clue what to do. Like, they enforced masks into schools, for example, because they didn't want to fight with the Scottish First Minister.
Oh, wow.
The Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister at the time, found out that the rules on the second lockdown were completely nonsense and it was bad science they basically followed, which didn't make any sense, and the scientists were telling them otherwise, and they didn't they kept on enforcing lockdown rules, not because of the science but because of public opinion determined otherwise, because
Wow.
people were feared. And a part of the reason why they were feared is because the government was saying stay at home or else you'll kill your grandma.
We were getting that message too all the time. Like, oh, if you're out in a store without a mask on, like, oh, you're killing grandma. You're so selfish. All the mask Karens would and it was always these people who were like they're either very germophobic to begin with, or they love having power over people. And it's like, what? Oh, you're giving me a reason to like put other people down and bully other people. So people they jumped on it. They loved it. They loved being having the hall monitor pass with the masks. And I just found it was an interesting process, like testing the waters. Like, all right, I'm going to go into this store without a mask and see what's the worst that can happen. Like, all right, I'm going to ride the train today and see if I get fined. And then just like nothing would really happen. It's like, oh, we've been able to just like do this. I don't know. Maybe obviously it was different in America, but I found I was definitely in the minority of people like pushing it wherever I was, like pushing it and walking around. But I also live in New York, which is a blue state, and in the New York City area, which is very blue and retarded. So that's crazy that people did you find like your peers thought the lockdown should have started faster and been more strict, or are you more getting that from like the media and the messages you were getting?
It was with both. I think the government, this isn't completely fact check, but I remember because I was working at the Co-op, which is a store in the UK, and I put out the papers every day, and each paper had like this thing about lockdown, saying like comply with lockdown and stuff. Every single paper. So the media was completely like on side with lockdown. Barely anyone questioned it, at least in the papers. And in the news as well, like the BBC, which is basically the mouthpiece for the government, pretty much. Although, except when the government actually does something mildly conservative, then they're very left wing, pro BLM, and everything. But just generally, like they weren't skeptical of lockdown until now, when everyone's like every newspaper, like the Telegraph, the Sun, now they're hitting back against the lockdown because the lockdown files have been released. With people at my own school. Again, they just really followed it. I don't think most people are political. And to be fair, it doesn't make sense to spend all your time looking at the facts and statistics unless you're interested in politics. Because, like, why would you? You can't really impact it. It's not like as a 16-year-old or even at any age, you're not really going to impact government policy. The only thing you can do with that information is get annoyed at it. So there's not really point from, like, a psychological perspective. They just accepted it. And even if they did have a dispute, like I said, it wasn't because of politics. It was because they just didn't like the masks.
They were just annoying. Yeah. And then it's just funny because I would wear the same one like over and over. And then you get like word on the streets like, oh, you could buy I think they were called like not matte. I forgot the name of them, but they were basically like sheer, like a completely sheer material. Those were popular for a while. And then I finally found ones from Amazon that were like, you could actually see the holes in them. Like it was like crisscross, almost like a fishnet material, but it was covered in like these rhinestones. So the shininess and the sparkliness would kind of distract from the fact that they were like, it was fully open, but like, that's what I would wear on the plane and stuff. And until I would get yelled at, I'd be like, oh, because I would just have like a couple on me, like, and then like if I got yelled at enough times on a plane, obviously I wouldn't be thrown off a plane. So I would eventually like put a real one on, but it wouldn't really come to that. I just would like push it as much as I could. And then you go to like Vegas and all the like the dealers and the girls down there, like they're all wearing like the sparkly fake masks too. But it is interesting to hear like what other people's experiences were at that time, especially like it was such a pivotal time in your life. Like you're supposed to be finishing school, figuring out like what you want to be when you grow up. And it sounds like it was pretty disruptive. And anybody that like friends of yours, did it like in a major way change the path that they were going down? Like you mentioned some were not getting into college and university, but do you have any friends that just like it took a really negative toll on them emotionally, or they like turned to drugs, or they just lost all motivation for trying to get work or pull ahead?
One weird thing that did happen, everyone became a lot more progressive after lockdown. Like I remember one of my friends who's always been a bit quiet and I don't say this in a bad way, but weird, like a bit antisocial with people. But like he was still a friend. We made small talk at the bus stop, and one day he just says, "Oh, was it agender or bigender
Oh
or
no, God.
non-binary?" And I was just like, "Where's this come from? What do you mean by that?" And he was just like, "I don't know. I'm just confused." And now he's changed his name. Like he never had any of these opinions before. In fact, like I
Wow.
remember he was one of the people who made fun of his other friend, for saying that he was trans. And with the trans thing as well, it's kind of interesting because from guys, they're always seen as either orthogynophiles, as in they want to dress up as women for sexual pleasure, or they're gay guys who like feel like feminine. But my friend wasn't in any of these things. Like, I think it was more of the social pressure and the lack of identity, and probably being glued to social media for 2 years probably wasn't healthy. And I think because he had no community like he had at school, and he could turn into these echo chambers, I think that probably had a massive impact on him. And because these vulnerable young people had no places to go to, like, a lot of people have problems at home, and that probably was made worse through lockdown because they had to spend so much time with their families. That was probably a toxic situation. And because of that, they were on TikTok all the time, which was normalizing these radical ideas like there were more than two genders, or like all the BLM stuff, which was completely crazy. And because of that, that was seen as like common sense. All
Wow.
these things that were seen as crazy in 2016, like everyone, even people who weren't political, adopted these ideas. So I think that was the biggest change.
That's so interesting because people mostly focus on how the lockdowns affected students academically and socially too. And a lot of people turn to drugs, but like I don't hear a lot of people talking about like what you're suggesting, which is like the lockdowns really kind of exacerbated the trans movement. Like you're feeling isolated, you're not with your friends, like yeah, and you're just glued to TikTok, glued to YouTube, and you see these influencers, you see these people glamorizing like the trans lifestyle. Like if you're feeling awkward in your body or you have no community and no friends, like this is your way out. Like come with it's really like a cult. And I'm sure there will be some interesting studies coming out on the effect, like how many kids identify as like trans, like before and after the lockdowns, just because it did provide such a sense of community and like, oh, this is your way out of feeling awkward or uncomfortable with your body. So that's so crazy. Did you have any friend other than this one that you're mentioning? Did you notice a lot of your friends kind of showing more interest kind of in that community?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that drove me to making political TikTok videos was the fact that a lot of my friends who were previously apolitical started to post like these infographics about like just blatant misinformation about BLM. Like one of this girl I knew from school, for example, reshared this thing of this police officer who apparently committed some awful crime, which I just did a quick Google search on. And 2 seconds later, like I found that it wasn't true. Like it's been fact checked and debunked a million times. And if you just think about it, like this poor police officer has basically got a million people who've liked that post against him because people can't be bothered to fact check. Like these people aren't activists. And these same people, I had this discussion with this girl, and I remember having this discussion. She was very active online with posting stories on Instagram about BLM and that kind of stuff. And so I just had a discussion. I was like, why do you feel like this? Like, what have you researched and stuff? Like, have you seen any evidence of this? And she referenced this refugee girl who came into our school when we were 14. And it's kind of funny because, well, it's very sad, funnily sad, because the refugee girl was bullied a lot. They weren't nice to her at all. Like she fainted and everyone laughed at her. And no one stood up for her at that point. Like the same people who are posting these activist
Mm,
graphics are the same people who didn't stand up for the small guy at school. And it's like these aren't the ones who are fighting for freedom, fighting for justice. They're just following the crowd. So I don't
wow.
know, it was very revealing to see that, but it made everyone so much more political, and it was very scary to see these things that were obviously not true. No one's really questioned them, become just basically common sense, or what they seem to be common sense.
Yeah. The lockdowns were politicized, the vax was politicized, COVID was politicized. Oh, you can't even talk about that it's from China, or that the lab leak theory, which most people assumed right away, oh, you couldn't say it. And now it's finally okay to talk about. It's so backwards. And I think that was done intentionally just to disrupt. And it just seemed like, the game like Hungry Hippos, where there's a bunch of marbles in the middle, and then you get you just have to like chomp, chomp, chomp. I feel like that's what it was like during the lockdowns. Like everyone's like, oh, divide everybody up. Everyone's just like we got the progressives over here and like the trans movement, and everyone's like, okay, like let's just chomp up our people. Let's divide into our groups. I don't know. That's a terrible metaphor, but it's really interesting to hear your experience about what went on and how you had a lot of, kids are not really supposed to be, most kids are not like, I mean, like under 18 are not like politically active or passionate. So it seemed like maybe it was a goal of the lockdowns to kind of grab kids younger than they normally would have been to kind of, go left or go more progressive. Like there was like a targeted effort there. Oh, thank you, The Dark Step, for becoming a new member. Okay. And then something very interesting happened. There was an incident in the UK. I don't know how far this is from where you are, but I guess some boys, there was a bet, and I don't know how old these boys were. I'm going to pull up an article, but basically a kid lost a bet and had to bring a Quran to school, which is basically like the Muslim Bible or Torah or whatever. And I guess there was some kind of a fight or scuffle, and the book got like dropped or kicked or dirty somehow. Like the front page got folded. There was like a very minimal damage on this Quran, but it caused this huge backlash, and basically these kids were suspended from school. I want to make sure I have that right, because it sounds crazy. Like it's hard to believe.
Yeah, not only
That
were
that's
they
actually the
suspended
result.
from school, but it's also been filed as a non-crime hate incident, which is this new
Wow.
thing. Like thousands have been issued, but basically the police have it on record that this kid's gotten into this issue.
This is from The Critic. Okay, this is Britain's blasphemy laws. This is the article you sent me, which I think is really good. Okay, I'll just read it to recap for people that are unfamiliar. In 2021, a teacher was suspended from a school in Batley, Yorkshire, for showing pupils a caricature of Muhammad during a religious studies lesson. Protests from aggrieved Muslims were fierce. The teacher went into hiding and has never been seen again. Doubtless remembering the fate of Samuel Paty, the French teacher who was killed for a similar, quote, crime. Wakefield is 7 miles from Batley. In Kettlethorpe High School in the city, 4 boys have been suspended. Their sin, causing slight cosmetic damage to a copy of the Quran, which, as their head teacher states, no malicious intent by those involved. So this is like accidental. Slightly damaging a book, and a book no less, that the students had purchased themselves, is grounds for suspension now. It sure is, but not because the authorities at Kettlethorpe High School are iron disciplinarians, but because they are trying to appease a mob of activists. Apparently, one of the pupils brought the Quran into school after losing a bet. This doesn't make sense to me, but kids make odd decisions. According to the school's investigation, it appears that one of the students dropped the book after being collided with. It also picked up a smudge of dirt, which will surprise no one who is familiar with the hygiene of teenage boys. It's probably like chocolate or something. Or what do you guys eat? Vegemite. Somehow rumors spread. Activists came to believe that the Quran had been kicked or spat on, which inflamed a huge uproar in the Muslim community. Some even suggested that the Quran had been torn up in front of Muslim students. Had that taken place, it would have been deplorable, just as if a Bible had been torn up in front of Christian students or a Torah in front of Jewish students. As far as I can tell, though, there is no evidence that it did, but activists were unsatisfied, elected officials among them. Usman Ali, for example, a local labor counselor, announced that the Quran had been desecrated and that the school, the police, and local authorities should be taking swift and appropriate action to deal with this grave situation. We all need to work together to make sure that this terrible provocation does not set back community relations, Ali wrote, blissfully unaware that the people endangering community relations were those, like him, who were treating an incident of teenage rambunctiousness like a school shooting. The school, after liaising with the police, because, of course, the police have nothing better to do than investigating slight cosmetic damage to a book, and, quote, community leaders, whoever the hell they are, suspended the boys. Independent counselor Akif Akbar is playing the peacemaker in this situation. He has emphasized that absolutely nobody should engage in any violence and that the kids who have been suspended should be protected and safeguarded. Well, that's good. But while I think Mr. Akbar is sincere in his desire to stabilize community relations, the premises he works from need interrogating. He is asking local Muslims to be magnanimous enough to tolerate an outrageous provocation when in reality it was a non-event that should have not caused a scandal to begin with. In one video released on his Facebook page, he addresses Wakefield residents alongside a woman who he introduces as the mother of the boy who brought the Quran into school. The boy, it turns out, was highly autistic, yet more reason to sympathize with him. But while Akbar is preaching peace, certainly better than the alternative, he is still behaving as if the boy committed some sort of monstrous crime. He was rightfully expelled, he says. His mother has, of course, shown her remorse. Of course? What do you mean, of course? Why should she feel remorse? Because her son brought a book into school. And it sounds like she probably didn't even know that this was happening. Akbar tells us that the autistic boy has been receiving death threats and threats to beat him up. You might think this would be cause for fierce condemnation. Passions do flare, says Akbar, and sometimes we let them out in the wrong manner. Passions do flare. We're talking about death threats, not somebody using the F word. Imagine the uproar if a Muslim child received death threats and a white politician shrugged and said passions do flare. The mother has had to inform the police, Akbar says, but to her credit, she doesn't want the children to be prosecuted. Why shouldn't she? Again, I think that Mr. Akbar is doing the right thing according to his values, but we should not accept a preposterous situation in which a child handling a book with some degree of carelessness is framed as a more grave misdeed than sending death threats. That Muslims view the Quran with great reverence is entirely their right, but in a secular society, they cannot expect everyone else to do the same. The school, meanwhile, has betrayed its students, hanging them out to dry to appease hair trigger sensitivities. That at least one of them was heavily autistic rubs the home-based cowardice and irresponsibility of adults who should have been standing up for kids. Somehow, Britain has adopted de facto blasphemy laws. They don't even have to be formalized. In one town, a teacher had to flee for his life for the crime of showing a picture. In another, just down the road, 4 kids were kicked out of school and showered with death threats for the crime of dropping a book. This cannot be allowed to continue. You know, this is funny. This is the second time I've read this now. And now that I read it more, and I don't know if this is true, but is there like a very large Muslim population in the UK?
So basically, I don't think actually where this story is set there was, but there is a growing Muslim population in the UK, and because of the geography, I think they group together more so. So, for example, there will be like schools where it's completely Muslim, and then a few white kids there. And there are many cities in the UK where white people are now the minority. For example, like London, of course, but I think Manchester is as well, and Birmingham. And so it means that the Muslim population, basically, we're living all these situations like that example given by Ben Sixsmith, who's a writer for the Critic, which is really good, and I'd recommend anyone check him out. It basically causes them to live under their laws pretty much. I don't think that this incident was really shocking for me, because if you watch the video, the mother's there at the community thing with the counsellor at her side, and it's like she's held hostage. She's
Is there a link to the video in this article here?
I don't know.
Oh, maybe it's this. Maybe it's this.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, let me play this. Oh, okay, it's already up. Whoops. Oh my God. What's going on with this? All right, I'm just turn the volume up.
Journey to how it came about for him to go and start this autistic student, and what the course of that meeting entailed and what she experienced. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Oh, that's the mom right there.
So
Yeah, next to
yesterday evening, along with Brother Ali, local masjids, community leaders, we've been dealing with this issue, and I won't repeat what Hafiz Mateen has already said. We've attended at the school, and through my large social media platform, I've kept the community updated, got rid of these rumors.
Wow, she looks miserable.
Or anything else
Yeah.
of that nature. Whilst this has transpired after Jummah Namaz today, I had a message from a lady who is sat next to me. She's the mother of the autistic student that was involved in this incident. And she put forward to me what happened, how it happened, what her version of events are, what she did as a mother, and the predicament that she now faces. And I looked at the message. It was a very long message, and I looked at it for about 5 minutes. And how do we deal with this issue? And at the end of the day, we're Muslims. We have a responsibility to people. So I agree.
I feel like this is the reaction here is like far more harsh than if somebody, messed up a Bible or a Torah. I don't know. It just seems like it seemed like way more of an extreme reaction for some reason than I think if it had been any other religious book.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a lot of reasons why this is. I think it's because Muslims and Islam is seen as like an oppressed minority group, so therefore everything is taken a lot more seriously. Like, there's a policeman in that video, and he's basically just there nodding his head. In that video, the mother says that she's not going to press charges onto the community, onto the kids or the people sending death threats to her
Wow.
child. Now, I don't know about you, but if someone was sending death threats to my child, I would be fuming. So
Yeah.
I think this mother is probably very upset. Of course she is. Like, she's there for a reason. If she didn't think it was a cause for concern, I think it might be another video. But I think
Okay.
if it was a cause for concern, like, she's there for a reason. So for her not to be pressing charges, I think she's worried that it might escalate further. And the fact that the police are sat there, basically taking the side of the Muslims who are complaining about this, when damaging a Quran shouldn't be a crime, even if it's with an intent. In this situation, it's not, but it should be your freedom of expression to do so. And I've gone out in the street, I think it was last week, and I asked people, which one do you think is more important, religious freedom or freedom of expression, religious tolerance or freedom of expression? And everyone I asked at the start said freedom of expression. And then they quickly changed their mind when I brought up the Quran thing, as this video shows.
This is a great video. And this is where was this video taken?
In Oxford.
Okay. Like on like the university campus or just in the area?
Yeah, at the university campus. I don't know if they're students though, but it was at the campus.
Okay.
Freedom of expression or religious tolerance?
Freedom of expression?
Why?
So, firstly, there's no God. Like, so anything religious.
So badass.
It's basically based on something thousands upon thousands of years ago. We have grown as a society so much since then.
Recently, a student damaged a Quran and they got suspended by their school. Do you think that that was the right action to take by the school?
Yeah, no, that was all right. You still need to respect other people's religions, so long as we're tolerant. Only once a religion becomes hateful, etc., should it then become a problem.
Do you not think that might go against freedom of expression, though?
No, I mean, like, I'm religious, but I'm also queer, and my freedom of expression is more important to me than, like...
Isn't that funny? Like, queer people always let you know right away that they're queer. Like, even though what you're talking about kind of has, like, nothing to do. Well, FYI, I'm queer, everyone. Like, we get it. We can tell by your whole outfit.
Orthodox values. So, like, I've kept with my religion, but I've kept with the freedom of expression for myself and for others, that people should live the lives that they basically want to live.
But if a student wants to damage a Quran, do you not think they should have the right to do it?
No, because it's unnecessarily and disrespectful.
It's interesting. Yeah, like you're saying, there's mental gymnastics here. She's saying, oh, freedom of expression trumps everything. Oh, but not a Quran. It's almost like, I get the sense, like, are people just intimidated? Like they're afraid of pissing off Muslim people, or afraid of like what they would probably be okay with a Bible or a Torah. It's like, oh no, not the Quran. Like,
Well, I put it on my Twitter. I don't know if you can find it, but basically in another interview that I did, at the same time as this, I asked, do you think it's okay if we burn a Quran? And the guy goes, yeah, that's completely fine. It's a part of religious freedom.
Is it this video or...
It's on my Twitter timeline.
Oh, okay.
it shouldn't be that far off. And then he completely contradicts himself a bit further down.
Oh, look at you. You're on TV. Is it this one?
No, the one further down.
Okay.
Down a bit more. That one.
Okay. Oh my God. Is this like wish.com Prince Harry here? Okay, let's see this one.
What do you think is more important, religious tolerance or freedom of expression?
I'd personally say freedom of expression. I think it's very important to be tolerant, but I think ultimately,
this is the most British video of all time. It's like you have your khaki trench coat, the bells are tolling, this guy. I'm loving it.
For a free society is what you're able to say, and I feel like the right to kind of offend someone is kind of important because it's a sign that we live in a free society, ultimately, even if it can make us uncomfortable at times.
So do you think I should have the right to burn a Bible, for example, if I wanted to?
I think so. I personally think that, like,
See,
I mean,
no big
I
deal.
wouldn't personally, I'm not a religious, but I wouldn't personally think that's a great thing to do. But I think that still it's, you know, a right you have in terms of expressing your political views, your kind of, I guess, anti-religious views in that case in a free society. So yeah, I guess so.
So I don't know if you've heard of this case, but a year 10 student recently got suspended.
You're very good at this, by the way. Like, I'm very impressed with you. Like, just the balls you have to talk to people on the street. And you mentioned like a way that you kind of like a tip that you use. You know, you wouldn't really say, like, if you want to express an idea of yours that you think is different than the person you're talking to, you'll say like, oh, how do you respond to the claim that, which is very smart. And it's a good tactic for not, you know, putting somebody on the defensive, but still trying to like get a good answer out of them.
From school after damaging a Quran. Do you think that was the right move from the school's part?
I do, because I don't think that's damaging that person's free speech. I think there's a confusion between
what a hypocrite. He literally is saying it's okay with a Bible, but not with a Quran.
Free speech being viewed as, you know, someone literally being suppressed from what they're being able to speak out, and someone being, you know, punished for that action. You know, it's not like they're taking legal action against them. It's a school's institution, and it's quite a very, very culturally insensitive thing to do. So I think that that's not damaging that person's free speech, but I think it's correct to show that person that's very culturally insensitive and in a way racist, to be honest.
But if a governmental institution is basically punishing a student for exercising their way to express themselves, do you not think that might be damaging their freedom of speech?
It's an interesting question. I think it's not one where necessarily there's a kind of completely black and white answer. I think nuance is important, and I think that is a, you know, fairly inflammatory thing to do. But yeah, I guess to me that's the thing. There's a difference between suppression and accountability. I think it's okay to hold people accountable to a degree for things that are culturally insensitive.
Wow, really good job. It's like really interesting to see the different responses.
I love how he was so quick to say, yeah, it's completely fine to burn the Bible, it's a part of your freedom of expression. But then when it comes to the Quran, he's like, it's a bit more black and white, because like he can't justify it in his mind.
I wonder if it's because like the kind of person that's going to be pissed at you for damaging a Quran is a lot scarier than the kind of person that would be upset that you damaged a Bible.
I'm not
Maybe
sure.
I'm just dealing in stereotypes here, but like I'm just getting the sense that people are like, ooh, like they seem scared to me.
Yeah, it's the same with the gender thing. Everyone says like, oh, maybe they're afraid. I actually don't think they're afraid. I think they've probably not thought of the question before, because with things like the Quran and Islamic tolerance, or with like how many genders there are, that's just seen as a fact. It's seen as something you can't question. And there's lots of things you don't question. Like if you ask me anything to do with science, like I have no idea. I could be completely wrong about everything, and I'd have no clue. Like if someone who knew a lot about science had a conversation with me, they'd probably like clenching their fist at how little I know about it. And it's the same with politics. Like they don't have a stake to know about it. Why would they do their research? Why would they bother by basically saying something that's seen as a controversial opinion? What's in it for them? Because like this man, for example, what does it matter for him if a child gets suspended from school or receives death threats after damaging a Quran? Or with the toilet situation, you know, most women are probably completely fine with trans women coming into their toilets until it actually comes to the woman whose safety is at risk. Same with the prison situation. So unless you're willing to, like, you know, put your head above the parapet and contradict the popular belief, you're probably just going to say what everyone else is saying, because why would you question it? You're probably not thinking to question it.
Right. So if someone came on the street and asked you this, would you say, do you think it's okay to damage like a Quran or a Bible, like what would be a scenario where you'd be like, okay, I understand, like where you would be able to be like, okay, I understand why he did that, or is there no situation where that's okay?
I mean, for me, I think there's a difference between something being moral and something being legal. Like, there's plenty of things that are moral which are illegal, and plenty of things that are immoral which are legal. So I think the law and morality are completely different. I think someone should have the freedom to be as disrespectful as they want to be, as long as it's words and not violence. Like, I think violence is completely wrong. But of course, I can disagree with things. It's like with the trans thing in the UK. A lot of gender critical women who have an issue with this, they turn to the law, they turn to the Equality Act to save them. They basically say, well, it's actually a law that sex is a protected characteristic, so the government needs to protect that. I don't believe in that. I think a company should be able to be free how they want to be. I don't think we should depend on the law, because the law oftentimes fails us. I think the reason why the trans thing is so awful is because it's immoral, not because it should be illegal. And it's the same with this. Like, you can find it very disrespectful that a kid is damaging a Quran, but that doesn't mean that the kid should face any legal repercussions to that, nor do I think it's right that they're being sent death threats.
Yeah, that poor mom. It's like she literally was like begging for forgiveness and over something that sounds like an accident, or maybe they just were like, even if someone's like tossed their books and didn't realize, like, it's just their kids. Like, kids don't really respect any book, especially at school. They're like, oh, these are my gay textbooks. Like, I don't even wish I wasn't even here. So, but that you can tell that mom is like really struggling with how to handle, and I don't know, maybe they'll have to just switch schools. I mean, clearly they're suspended, but probably has to like move.
It's just such a shame that the police aren't there to protect that woman and her child. Recently as well, another example is that basically it's now illegal to pray outside an abortion clinic. And again, this is a situation
Wow.
where
I think that was on your timeline. Let me find it.
It was quite atrocious. So basically a lot of women in general are getting in trouble by the police, getting arrested by the police for simply praying peacefully outside abortion clinics, because any protest outside abortion clinics is now illegal. So the police are spending more time on that, more time on, arresting people for praying than protecting this autistic 14-year-old boy.
Wow. And I think I've seen this clip. When did this take place?
There's been multiple situations of this happening.
Okay, there's more.
Can I please ask you to step away from here and step outside this?
She's just praying in the vicinity. Oh, this is wild.
But you've said you're engaging in prayer, which is the offence. No, but you are still engaging in prayer.
This is wild.
Okay, then. So
you can't pray.
Be arrested and taken away and stand outside the exclusion zone. Is that what you're saying? Yes.
I wonder if these cops hate their lives. Like, really, we're about to arrest this woman for like essentially talking to herself. Just quiet prayer is not allowed. That's what they're spending their time on. Yikes. That's wild. That's so bonkers. I feel like the priorities are backwards. Like, there might be women on their way to, right? That's like the equivalent of a Planned Parenthood. Like, they're not sure. They probably would like someone to talk to. They're probably going alone. They've hidden it. A lot of people, like, they hide it from their parents. Sometimes women hide it from the guy that it happened with. I just don't think that anybody, I used to think, like, even when I was younger, like, yeah, I remember the protesters outside Planned Parenthood. Like, I would occasionally go in there to get like birth control or whatever. Or, like, when I didn't have a job, you can get a free, checkup in there, like a free like pap smear or something. Like, because I would go a couple times just because, like, when you're broke, like, you can get cheap healthcare there. And I just would be like, oh, these protesters are here. But now that I'm older, it's like they probably weren't all there for negative reasons. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's people that go that probably are like, hey, do you need somebody to talk to? And it could actually be a positive thing. And maybe they're just going there in a weak moment. I don't know. I think I just look at it differently now, and it's just a horrible position to have to be in to make that decision, one way or the other. And
Yeah, I think one of the biggest lies that feminism has taught women that abortion is an easy choice, regardless of whether you're pro-life or pro-choice. It shouldn't be something that's taken simply. Like it's awful what a woman has to go through, never mind the fetus. And I think having that reassurance, like it's not. I don't think many women probably want to have an abortion. I think most women probably don't want to be in that situation. And they're in that situation it might be because they don't have enough support. It might be because they're in an abusive situation. It might have been non-consensual. And I think there needs to be more sensitivity around the issue. But that woman praying is not the issue. Like I understand if it's someone like physically assaulting people at an abortion clinic, like of course that would be wrong, but a small woman praying is not causing anyone harm.
yeah, yet they're going to ignore the kid getting death threats for messing up the Quran a little bit, and it was an accident too. So
it just shows what the British state is prioritizing at the moment.
Yikes. Wow. Yeah, I definitely don't. I was not this interested in politics when I was your age. So maybe do you feel like a lot of your friends are kind of similarly becoming more passionate and like waking up and just more aware of what's going on around them?
Not really. Well, most of my friends are now in politics because now I've been able to move closer to London and I'm doing an internship at a think tank at the moment, and that's been fantastic. But I think generally people still don't care. Like I said, I think politics is more thrusted upon people rather than them finding a general passion. And I don't want people to be political. I wish the state was smaller. Like we have the highest tax burden in over 70 years. There's so many authoritarian laws being passed in the UK, and we're seeing the consequences of previous laws being passed, like the Equality Act or the Gender Recognition Act or the Communications Act. No, they're coming into fruition even though they were enacted under a Labour government in the 2000s. With all these diversity inclusion offices. I don't know if you have a similar thing in the US. In every single sector.
They're pushing it like it seems more. I'm not super familiar with the laws, but it seems the diversity, equity, inclusion stuff is more easily trying to be pushed through like the institutions like school and corporations. So it's like wherever you work, they make you take the diversity, equity, inclusion test and they like jam it down your throat kind of that way. Like I don't know, but maybe they are trying to push laws. I know that like California has basically become like a trans utopia. Like you can just basically go to California with your kid and they'll basically like trans your kid up. You don't even need both parents to sign off on it. And I think that also in California they give some sort of like a stipend, like if you can prove that you make under a certain amount and that you can, I guess it's just say that you're trans or gonna be trans for a certain amount of time, they give you a check. So
it's crazy what we're incentivizing now. Like with so recently another example is Roald Dahl. Do you guys know Roald Dahl in America? Matilda.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, his work this is another controversy. His work has currently been censored. So Augustus Gloop in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, you can't call him fat anymore. You can't call the twits ugly. That's all been censored. That's apparently terrible for children. But it's fine them being put up for hate crime. It's fine them receiving death threats. It's fine telling them they can be whatever gender they want, potentially leading them to go through terrible surgery. That's completely fine. But saying someone's fat or old, apparently that's too
this
far.
Is so wild. Okay, the thought police have come for Roald Dahl and Ian Fleming. Better buy the books that you want now. Perhaps nothing better illustrates the silliness of our times and the disturbing trend to rework classic books to make them palatable for a modern audience. Applying current mores to the past and forcing the past to conform to our enlightened ways is patently unwise and smacks of something from George Orwell's 1984. Wow. British children's author Roald Dahl and James Bond creator Ian Fleming are the largest targets of woke publishing in the woke publishing world, and sensitivity readers. Yeah, most people don't care and are fine with it. It's like the vocal few that kind of push this change. What do these popular authors think about this makeover of their works? We can't know, as both men died decades ago. Dahl wrote the beloved classics Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Matilda, James and the Giant Peach. Oh man, I loved all these books. His works are known for being somewhat dark, and his eccentric characters are what have drawn generations of children to them. Fat and ugly are taboo words. The troubling words that may offend today's sensitive children. You gotta be kidding me. We need bullying. How else are you gonna lose the weight? And that new editions of these books have erased include fat, ugly, and black, not used as a racial connotation. New lines have been added. Women are given more exciting jobs. Female has been changed to woman. Gender neutral words are also preferred to offensive ones like men, mother, father, girls, and boys. A paragraph in The Witches talks about how the witches are bald under their wigs. Apparently, that needed an addition of this line. There are plenty of other reasons why women might wear wigs, and there is certainly nothing wrong with that. Oh my God. Dahl purists and free expression advocates have pushed backed hard against this meddling, and Penguin Random House, which distributes Dahl's books, has agreed to keep classics, original copies of his works. That's good, in addition to the freshly scrubbed ones. But who knows how long they'll keep doing that. Man, yeah, I'm glad to know this because I want to buy up some of these before they get permanently altered. I think once you start going down the road of applying the modern sensibilities to any art of the past or even art today that might deviate somewhat from orthodox thought or common opinions and perspective, you really limit the range of creative expression that's available in our society, says Aaron Turr, Director of Public Advocacy at the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. It's really like this really ties into what you were saying before, Jess, the expression is the work of art, and the religion is honestly like wokeism and the alphabet gang. It's really become like a religion. And I think a society that believes in creative and artistic expression certainly doesn't rewrite books to avoid any possibility of offending potential readers. Wow, this happened to Dr. Seuss too. Yeah, I bought a couple of Dr. Seuss books that were supposedly, naughty and no longer going to be published anymore. And it was literally, this was like the one in question. And it's definitely like a cheap knockoff version. Like it's a bootleg for sure because there's no spine on it. I'm like, whatever, I'm not going to return them because it is what it is. But the biggest deal in this book is basically that they said like Chinaman.
Yeah, I remember
I was like,
that.
that's it?
Well, at least it's getting you to buy more books, I guess.
I guess so. Yeah, it did work on me. Yeah, a Chinaman who eats with sticks. Big deal. That's it. Like, this is why we can't handle some slanty eyes. Okay, the skin is yellow, but a lot of this is yellow. The dinosaurs are yellow. There's like 3 colors in here. It's not a big. I was like, that's it. It was such a non-event. But now I have to go and buy these other books now. Let me see what else they said here. Yeah, similarly, some of Fleming's wording is too racist for today's readers, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Bond girls get new personas as well. Pussy Galore, Kissy Suzuki, and Honey Rider aren't likely to sit well with modern women. Ugh. Can we stop, orienting the world for the modern audience? Such rewrites undermine what literature is all about. Books are not only engaging stories, they are windows into the past and past ways of thinking. Yeah, this is, to me, that's like they want to erase the past and just rewrite it in their and how they prefer it. Wow, that was 2 years ago. Yep, it was Mick Elliott's Pool, On Beyond Zebra, Scrambled Egg Super, and Cat's Quizzer were deemed racist and insensitive. This is nuts. Rushdie is joined by other high-profile critics. Amidst fierce battles against book bans and strictures on what can be taught and read, selective editing to make works of literature conform to particular sensibilities could represent a dangerous new weapon, tweeted Suzanne Nossel, CEO of PEN America. Those who might cheer specific edits to Dahl's work should consider how the power to rewrite books might be used in the hands of those who do not share their values and sensibilities. Well, they never do that. They never consider what it's like because I think the left and progressives have been sort of in power, definitely culturally, for, 15, 20 years plus. So I think it's hard for these folks to imagine their side not being, the winning side.
Yeah.
Wow, this is so interesting. I'm gonna have to buy up some Roald Dahl. I can't say his name. Roald Dahl. Roald. Yeah.
I try and just say it as one Roald Dahl.
Roald Dahl.
Roald Dahl.
Just Roald Dahl.
Try not to think about it.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Okay. From Matthew Hammond. Thanks for the super chat. Does Jess have an idea of when people in Britain started arresting people for offending others? Jimmy Carr and Ricky Gervais's offensiveness used to be the norm, but now it is the exception in Britain. Yeah. When did that happen?
So the abortion thing came about probably less than a year ago, but generally it was a Communications Act of, I believe, 2003, which basically brought this about. So the idea of a non-crime hate incident, for example, that's basically just where the police have your record. Scotland has a much stricter laws on this. For example, do you know who Count Dankula is?
Yes, I love Dank.
Yeah, well, he got I think got arrested and fined for teaching his girlfriend's pug to do a Nazi salute, like all that ridiculousness.
It was adorable. Yeah.
But that basically came about during the Blair era, where they just put forward all these laws, and now wokeness is basically in every area, and everyone's reporting everything and more offended about everything. It's gone into fruition now.
Wow. This is shocking, but it's going on everywhere. Yes, Roald Dahl. That is a good pronunciation, Admiral. Roald Dahl. Dank is the best. I'm sure. I don't know what his fines were like, but I'm sure he had to pay something. And then I taught one of my dogs to howl because it was his. They were roasting him, and they asked for like a video from some of us. So I sat in the backyard. I tried to teach Muffin and Waffles to do it, but only Waffles would do it. So, now we know what her beliefs are. Basically,
do you have a certain word to like make her do it more?
They both know how to do paw. So I would be like paw, and then it'd be like Heil Hitler, and then I would just say it like I would give treats after each time until basically like paw was synonymous with like Heil or Heil Hitler.
And I would raise an army of fascist pugs.
Because she could do a high five, like, because I just made paw, and then I eventually like brought it up higher. She learned it pretty quickly. I haven't done it since. I haven't been keeping it up, so she might have forgotten about her racist history. So yeah, but they're Cavapoo and Golden Doodle, so we're getting the word out anyway. Waffles is based. Yeah. We're having fun. It's been so interesting to talk to you, Jess. We have to do this again. It's interesting to see like culturally what's going on in other parts of the world.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really interesting to have a conversation with you.
You're the best. Where can people follow you other than on Twitter at Jess Gill 03 and YouTube at Reasoned UK? Now, do you have a personal YouTube page as well, or they should just follow the Reasoned page?
Just the Reasoned one. I might start something in the future, but I'm not too sure yet. But okay. Twitter's mostly where I'm at, but I also make some TikTok videos under Gilly Politics.
Okay, cool. I hate TikTok, but if you must go on it, just go on to follow Jess, because there's just not enough anti-leftist content on there.
Thank you.
You're the best. Thank you to the chat. You guys were pretty well behaved. You were pretty good today. You had some good questions. I'll give you a B. And yeah, we will see you next time, guys. Thank you.